All right. Our next speaker is Michelle. Michelle is an engineer at Condé Nast and also an organizer of Node Girls London. And she's going to be talking about HTTP status codes, the weird and wonderful.
So, I'm Michelle, and I'm going to be talking to you about the very exciting topic of HTTP status codes, which is a topic that until recently I didn't know a lot about. I knew a little because I'm a woman of the internet, and I've clicked on some broken links, seen a 404, and in my code I've sent and received a couple of different status codes. But I don't think I really had like a fully comprehensive knowledge of all the different status codes in the world, and also how status codes even come to be, like who makes them up. So that's my name. This is where I work. And here's my Twitter if you would like to tweet me. Cool, so HTTP status codes, we're going to be covering what are they, what are the most common status codes that you might come across, and that it's good to know. And also, who made them up, like where do they come from? And also, what are my favorite HTTP status codes, which I don't know how I've reached a place in my life where I have a favorite HTTP status code, but here we are. Cool, so what are they? We're going to be talking HTTP, Hypertext Transfer Protocol. This is my beautiful little diagram, just in case we need a reminder. HTTP deals with when a client talks to the server, makes a request, and sends back a response. And the status code is what comes back in that response. It's a number. And here's a little definition: a standard response code given by web servers on the internet. And my little definition is that it's a 3-digit code that gives you some information about the request that was just made to the server. And for me, it answers the question, is everything okay? And if it's not okay, what went wrong? So, there are a couple of different categories of status code. There are 100s, 200s, 300s, 400s, 500s. You might have encountered a few of these. We're just going to go through some of the most popular ones. There might be some that you don't know or that you do know. So we're going to start with 100s, which I haven't really seen. They are informational status codes. So the main one is the 100, which just means continue. So you get this status code when a request is still in process. So it hasn't quite finished. And basically it's saying, like, go on, like, tell me more, so far so good. So a 100 code is not super exciting. So let's move on to the 200 codes, which is the best category. That means that your request has been successful. So the 200 status code is like the dream status code that we should all strive for as developers. It means that everything is okay. Yeah, Aziz, I'm sorry. And so that means you asked for something in the request and you got it back. So you might have asked for like a font file and then the server gave you the font file. So everything's doing great. Everything is chill. So let's talk about 300 status codes. Don't know what happened to my emoji. This is tragic. But 300 status codes are where it starts to get a bit more wild. They deal with redirection. So we've got a 301 status code, which means that something has moved permanently. So a piece of content was there, but now it's moved to another place. And you probably won't even notice that you're being redirected unless you're looking at the URL. So you might go to, like, if you went to thefacebook.com, you'll be redirected to facebook.com because it is now facebook.com. So there's a 301. A 302 is similar because it also means the content has moved, but it means that the content has moved temporarily. So the content has moved, but it's coming back to this spot. And the reason that there's a 301 code and a 302 code is it's really helpful for like search engines and SEO when they're deciding what pages to index and which ones not to index. So 400 codes, ooh, this is where it gets bad. I had lots of angry emoji there. So this is dealing with client error. So that means that something has gone wrong on the client side. So we've got a 401, which means unauthorized. So that could be that a user is not authenticated, that they haven't logged in. So it's like if you try to look at a private Facebook photo, but you're not logged in, it'll say unauthorized. Then you've got a 403, which means that something is forbidden. And that could mean that you might be logged in, but this piece of content is like you don't have the privilege to access it, or maybe no one has the privilege to access it. So you get that status code. And then we get the ultimate status code that you might have seen from even before you're a developer, a 404. That means that you're trying to access some content that doesn't even exist. Not found. And when you're building websites, I really recommend jazzing up your 404 page, make it a bit cool. Because at Vogue, we have like models falling off runways. We've got a large GIF library. This is Vogue Germany, Vogue Arabia, and then Vogue, British Vogue. So yeah, 404 page inspiration. So then we get to 500 status codes. This is a server error, which means, unfortunately, you might have done something wrong as the developer, and you probably have to fix something. So if you get a 500 status code, internal error, ooh, that's, yeah, not the greatest one to get. And to demonstrate, this is the status code that I got today when I was writing code, because I was trying to import a file that I'd renamed, and my server broke. But you can get all kinds of 500 errors. You might not have permissions, or not have an API key, or have a syntax error, all sorts of things. Whoa, what's happening here? Okay, cool. So this is a little thing which I find quite amusing. This is like a little summary of HTTP status codes. 100, hold on, continue. 200, here you go, there's the content. 300, go away, it's redirection. 400, you fucked up. 500, I fucked up. Yeah, so if you want a summary, there it is. Yeah, I'll leave it there. We all got our pictures. Great. Cool, so my question was, who made all of these codes up? I just got curious because I was like, there are all these arbitrary status codes. Who created these? Why did they choose these particular numbers? And if I wanted to make up a status code, how do I do that? Can I just implement my own status code, or is there some kind of process for this? So I started looking into this, as you do, and I discovered the Internet Engineering Steering Group, which I guess I always knew that there was some kind of body of the internet that did these kinds of things. But yeah, I never really knew specifically what it was. So the Internet Engineering Steering Group is a subset of the Internet Society. And they basically manage the standards of the internet, the technical standards. They manage like the implementation and the whole process for creating those. And there's actually a chairperson of the internet, and it's this lady called Alyssa Cooper. She works at Cisco. So FYI, there is a chairperson of the internet. So I thought that was cool. And there's a thing called the Internet Engineering Task Force, which is like, again, another subset. And inside the Internet Engineering Task Force, there are like 115 different working groups, which all are working to develop standards for different technical aspects of the internet, like push notifications or email or domains. And the one which pertains to status codes is called the Hypertext Transfer Protocol Working Group, which is a lovely group of people who look like this. These are the best photos I could find of them. And these people, they basically look after like HTTP, HTTP2 specs, and status codes. So when someone wants to update or create a new status code, they make what's called an RFC, and any member of the public can make an RFC. And that stands for request for comments. So if you want to change something in the internet, you can make an RFC. And it's basically like a long document where you outline what you want to do and you justify it, and then it's revised and developed and sent around mailing lists, and they meet 3 times a year, and then eventually it becomes an internet standard. So, with that in mind, here are my favorite weird status codes that made it through the RFC process. This is obviously, like, I could not talk about this. This is like everyone's favorite weird status code, and kind of controversial. It's called, it's the 418 code, and it's called I'm a Teapot. This is literally a real thing. So it turns out there's like this long tradition of April Fool's Day pranks in RFCs, and it's been going since like the 1970s. And so in 1998, someone proposed an April Fool's Day RFC to extend the HTTP protocol to HTCPCP, Hypertext Coffee Pot Control Protocol, where they implemented methods instead of, well, in addition to get and post, you have a method called brew, where you can brew the coffee. So that was a thing that was done in 1998 as an April Fool's Day prank. It was actually an activist move by this guy called Larry Masinter, who says, this has a serious purpose. It identifies many of the ways in which HTTP has been extended inappropriately, which is weird because he extended HTTP inappropriately. But yeah, so that happened. And then on April 1st, 2014, someone submitted an RFC to extend the HTCPCP protocol to HTCPCPT, which stands for the Hypertext Coffee Pot Control Protocol for Tea Efflux Appliances, and wrote like a several-page document which goes into great depth about why tea is like the ultimate hot beverage, and the protocol should be extended for this. And so this is the bit which implements the status code, I'm a teapot. It says, tea-capable pots that are not provisioned to brew coffee may return either a status code of 503, indicating temporary unavailability of coffee, or a code of 418, as defined in the base HTCPCP specification, to denote a more permanent indication that the pot is in fact a teapot. Yeah, so that's a real thing that happened. And this is a quote from my colleague, Gaspar, who I was talking to about this, and he said, I'm kind of mad when HTTP servers include 418 because it's not in the HTTP spec, it's only in the HTCPCP spec. If you're doing a joke, you have to commit to the joke and not half-ass it. So 418 never actually became part of the HTTP spec, but it's kind of this like internet legend, and some languages have actually fully implemented it, so it's kind of a thing. So Node.js has an implementation of I'm a teapot, as does the Go language. And so currently it's quite controversial because the HTTP working group are trying to lobby for the removal of implementations of 418 in popular open source languages and servers, because they feel that because it's not in the HTTP spec officially, it should not be represented, and they feel it's reserving a status code that could be used. So if you want to get involved in that, you can go join the 600 people who did a thumbs down reaction to that on GitHub. So there's also, moving on, that was quite intense. So 429, this is too many requests. And that's when you're like, you want to make 1 million requests to an API or something, or you're like refreshing a page too many times and you made too many requests. Twitter have implemented their own version of the status code called 420, which is called Enhance Your Calm. So basically, if you're using the Twitter Search and Trends API, you can work with the 420 status code. So that's a fun fact. There's also another controversial one, 451, which I found quite interesting, which means unavailable for legal reasons. And people refer to this as the censorship status code. So this status code was named after the novel Fahrenheit 451, which was a book in the 1950s, which was like a dystopia where they were burning all the books and there was no information available. This status code was first proposed in 2013, and it was rejected because they felt that it was not a serious problem on the internet. But in recent years, there have been a lot of governments which want to censor the internet. So this is what the HTTP working group said. They said, as censorship became more visible and prevalent on the web, we started to hear from sites that they'd like to be able to make this distinction. More importantly, we started to hear from members of the community that they wanted to be able to discover instances of censorship in an automated fashion. So basically, this has now been implemented, and if you see a 451 status code, that means that the content that you want to view, someone doesn't want you to view that, that has been legally removed or censored. So moral of the story is, status code responsibly. You have so many options at your disposal. So next time you want to send like a 200 or a boring 500, why not spice it up? Like maybe go for like a 301 or something like a 403. Why not? And also save 418. Get involved in the battle for that. And that is it, the end. Yay.
Thank you. That was great. I didn't know about the Teapot one at all, and I've been a developer for almost 4 years now.
Yeah.
So when I was explained earlier last week, I was like amused, but also a bit embarrassed.